Bleach was serialized within the pages of Shonen Jump for over 15 years. In that time, there was a lot of material released that accompanied the release of the official manga chapters. In this video, I will be explaining all of the bonus special chapters created by Tite Kubo so that you don't miss out on his vision for the story of Bleach. I am aware that as a manga, Bleach was pushed in a direction to center its story around Ichigo, and more in moments of action, and this was thanks to the input from the editorial department of Weekly Shonen Jump. They tend to push their mangaka to write and draw scenes that they think readers will find more interesting. This was notoriously documented with Dragon Ball, when Akira Toriyama's former editor had criticized his story and characters during the Cell arc. These special Bleach chapters that I will be talking about, I'd finally read after years of not even knowing about some of them. They had made me feel like I was reading an unadulterated version of Kubo, where he was not being influenced by the editorial department of Jump. So during this video, I will go over all of the Bleach special chapters in chronological order, as well as detailing when the chapters were released and where you can read them. Before the video begins, only 12% of the people who watch my content are subscribed to the channel. If you enjoy these videos, then subscribe and stick around for more content just like this. Now let's get back to the topic of the video. The first bonus special chapter that we will be speaking about is something incredibly special. In terms of historical significance, it is one of the most important chapters that Kubo has released. I am of course speaking about the Bleach pilot chapter, which is also referred to as Chapter 0. This pilot chapter was in fact submitted to Shonen Jump just after Kubo had wrapped up work on his first serialized manga, Zombie Powder. This pilot chapter was created after the original idea for Bleach was rejected by Shonen Jump. Kubo had become discouraged, but he had received a letter of encouragement from Akira Toriyama, the creator of Dragon Ball. After a personal recommendation from Toriyama, the pilot chapter of Bleach was published and it had begun to be serialized weekly. The original idea for Bleach had began with a picture of a girl that Kubo had drawn. This girl would eventually become Rukia Kuchiki, and the pilot chapter has several differences from the finalized version of the story that became Bleach. For instance, Ichigo's hair was black instead of orange. Orihime had originally died within the pilot chapter, and she was sent to the Soul Society. And lastly, the hollows that feature in the pilot are not wearing their iconic masks. If you want to learn more about the origins of the story that we all know and love, then definitely check out the pilot chapter of Bleach. This is a special chapter that you can read before chapter 1, and it can be found within the first Bleach data book Souls. Next up, we will be discussing special chapters that chronologically occur before the first chapter of the manga. And what better place to start than with Turn Back the Pendulum. This is a short series of 9 chapters that nearly every Bleach fan is familiar with. It chronicles what had occurred within the Soul Society over 100 years ago, detailing the origins of the Vizards, the beginnings of Aizen's schemes, and how Urahara and Yoruichi were exiled from the Soul Society. Turn Back the Pendulum can be found within volume 36 of the manga, and it is adapted into the anime between episodes 206 to 211. By far, from all of the special chapters on this list, Turn Back the Pendulum is the most iconic and defining special to be included into Kubo's additional work that he has done for Bleach. Turn Back the Pendulum should be read after chapter 315. Next up, we begin our list of bonus chapters with chapter -17, titled Prelude for the Straying Stars. This special chapter is included at the end of volume 15, and it should be read after chapter 130. This bonus chapter is set within the Soul Society during the time when Momo, Renji, and Kira were still at the Shinigami Academy. It tells the story of the first mission that they were sent on. It is to be noted that they were also accompanied by Shuhei Hisagi. At this time, Hitsugaya was still fairly young and living with his grandmother and Momo. He was not attending the Shinigami Academy and was even adamant that he would never leave his grandmother's side to study at the academy. This special chapter takes place before Everything But the Rain, which occurs 20 years before the 1000-year Blood War arc. And we are aware that during Everything But the Rain, Hitsugaya is the 3rd seated officer of the 10th Division. So we can assume that this chapter most likely covers events that had occurred over 50 years ago. Lastly, this chapter is adapted into episode 46 of the anime. The next special follows up from the last one, and it is titled Chapter -16, Dying in the Ice Fields. This occurs between Prelude for the Straying Stars and Everything But the Rain, as it features a young Hitsugaya who first meets his future lieutenant Rangiku. He ends up being convinced by her to join the Shinigami Academy in order to control the overwhelming powers of his Zanpakuto spirit Hyorinmaru. This special chapter was made to commemorate the release of the second Bleach movie, The Diamond Dust Rebellion. It is a canon reveal of the past of Hitsugaya. This chapter can be found at the end of volume 32 and it should be read after chapter 286. It was also adapted into episode 239 of the anime. The next bonus chapter that we have is chapter -12.5, titled Blooming Under a Cold Moon. It was released after chapter 168, and again it is another Hitsugaya centric story, as we follow the events that unfold during one of his birthdays. The story revolves around Rangiku planning an evening of watching fireworks with him, Momo, and Captain Aizen. During this special chapter, Hitsugaya is a captain, which reveals that this takes place after Everything But the Rain. This bonus chapter showcases to us a key moment involving Aizen interacting with Hitsugaya before the events of the Soul Society arc. It is strange to once again see Aizen playing this facade of being the stereotypical nice guy. This chapter was published at the end of volume 20 and it was adapted into episode 60 of the anime. Chronologically, we are now approaching chapter 1 with the bonus chapter 0.8 titled A Wonderful Error. This gives us a glimpse of Ichigo's first day of term at their new school, when his friend Mizuhiro first meets and befriends both Chad and Ichigo. This is an incredibly insightful chapter and it sheds some light on the lives of Ichigo and his friends before chapter 1. Ichigo and Chad had a reputation for being hoodlums. Keigo was disappointed that they were also attending the same school as him, but during the course of this chapter, A Wonderful Error, he learns that they are not as bad as what he had imagined after Ichigo had saved him from the hoodlum Oshima. This chapter was made after chapter 107 and it can be found at the end of volume 12, and lastly it is adapted into episode 227 of the anime. Chapter 0, Side A The Sand, is the first part to the two-part story of chapter 0. This chapter reveals to us the events leading up to Ichigo meeting Rukia during their fateful encounter in chapter 1 of the manga. It centers around Ichigo commenting on the nature of fate and reality, as he thinks over his unchanging powerlessness when he spots the blood from the soul of a young boy that he was unable to protect. He states that he can see, touch, and talk to spirits, but he can do nothing more to help them, and eventually they disappear, leaving behind only traces of blood with the faint smell of fear. This chapter ends with him meeting the soul of a little girl as he wipes the tears from her face, reassuring her not to cry. This chapter affirms Ichigo's desire for power so that he can protect others. Kubo further reinforces this desire by his wish at the end of the chapter, where Ichigo states that he wants to wield a strong blade that is powerful enough to shatter the grinding gears of fate. This bonus chapter was released at the end of volume 23 and it should be read after chapter 205. It was also adapted into episodes 109 and it was adapted again into episode 227. Following up from side A, we have chapter 0, side B, The Rotator. This reveals the events just before chapter 1 of the manga, but it is told through the perspective of Rukia, as she has just been informed that she is being stationed in the human world within an area of Karakura town for 1 month. She embarks on her first mission as Ukitake sees her off. Meanwhile, Renji learns that he has just been promoted to the lieutenant of the 6th division. Ikkaku, Momo, and Kira are aware that Rukia means a lot to him, so they advise him to quickly tell her before she leaves for her month-long mission, but Renji states that he will tell her when she comes back during his promotion ceremony in a month's time. Side B, The Rotator, answers Ichigo's questions about fate, as well as the poem at the end of the first half, as we learn about the Rotator who guides the crushing gears of fate. This half of the chapter was also published at the end of volume 23, and it is adapted into episodes 109 and adapted again into episode 227. We now continue our list of special chapters with material that was published chronologically after the events of chapter 1 of the manga. Chapter 25.2 is titled Things Like Loneliness. This is a 4-page bonus chapter that was released within the first Bleach databook Souls. This chapter takes place on the 18th of June, the day after the anniversary of Ichigo's mother's death. It takes place immediately after chapter 25, where Ichigo learns that his mother was killed by the Hollow the Grand Fisher. This bonus chapter reveals an insight into the complicated friendship between Tatsuki and Ichigo. She ends up scolding him for skipping 2 days of school as he sits by the riverside. It details how the two of them have grown distant over time, how she thinks about how they are no longer as close as they used to be, and it makes her feel lonely. She thinks that she doesn't care about feeling lonely, as she then invites Ichigo to the arcade to play games. This is another insight into one of Ichigo's friends from Karakura Town, and I really wish that we got more material like this covering some of the characters who don't really develop powers and fight alongside Ichigo. It makes you think about Tatsuki's loneliness and how she continued to become distant with Ichigo over the course of the Bleach series. Additionally, their friendship really did come to a crossroads during the Arrancar arc when Orihime was kidnapped and she frantically questioned Ichigo about what's going on, and she reveals that she has seen Ichigo running around in his Shinigami attire. Okay, so now we have some light-hearted material with chapter 88.5 titled Karakura Superheroes. The official Shinigami assigned to protect Karakura Town, Zenosuke, is shocked to learn that Danganronji's group of Karakura superheroes have been taking out hollows within his assigned area of Karakura Town. Now this is a fun side story that serves as the inspiration for several filler episodes like episode 33, 54 and 55. Chapter 88.5 was released at the end of volume 10 of the manga. The next bonus chapter was made for anyone who loves fan service, as chapter 260.5 is titled Bleach on the Beach, and it gives us the inspiration for the obligatory beach episode that is found within every anime, as this chapter was adapted into episode 228 of the anime. Bleach on the Beach takes place sometime after the end of the Soul Society arc, and it is another fun side story, as we see the Gote 13 having fun at the beach. The story centers around the characters competing to create the best sand sculpture. This chapter was released at the end of volume 29, and it should be read following chapter 260. Now, getting back to the serious stuff, we have the special chapter titled Not B But B. This bonus material reveals to us the backstory of Ulquiorra, as we learn that this material was cut from the manga due to timing issues, so that more focus could have been given to the battles and stories surrounding Ichigo. This bonus chapter is critical in understanding the character of Ulquiorra and his origins. It helps us to understand his nihilistic view on life and the void that he has within his chest in the place of his heart. This chapter is more like a poem than a linear story, helping to philosophically convey Ulquiorra's beliefs in nihilism and his feelings of emptiness. Sadly, this chapter was never really adapted into the anime, nor was it officially released in English, but it can be found untranslated in the third Bleach databook Unmasked. The second chapter made to commemorate the release of a Bleach movie is titled Imaginary Number 01, The Unforgiven. It was a bonus chapter made to commemorate the release of Bleach Movie 4 Hellverse. It reveals to us an insight into Bleach's interpretation of Hell, as we see two key villains of the Bleach story, Xylopodo and Aronniero, land in a strange new area as they learn that they have arrived within Hell. This chapter was published within the movie pamphlets that were handed out to theater viewers of the fourth Bleach movie in Japan. This special chapter should ideally be read after the Fate Karakura Town arc. I also cover the events of this chapter during my video which explains Hell in Bleach. Now, the final special chapter that was released during the serialization of Bleach was chapter 520.5. It is titled Walk Under Two Letters. This special chapter has Shuhei Hisagi visiting the grave of a Shinigami called Kanizawa. She was first revealed to us in chapter -17, and she was one of the Shinigami who were trained with Hisagi and was sent with him on that first mission that is detailed within chapter -17. In that special chapter, we learned that she had been killed by a large hollow. Hisagi had visited Kanizawa's grave every year on the anniversary of her death, as he states that he wanted to visit her before he leaves the Cerate to train with his captain. Chronologically, this chapter occurs after the first invasion of the Quincy, and it should be read after chapter 520. It was released at the end of volume 70 of the manga, and it was first published within the Japanese-only fan book 13 Blades. Now, the final special bonus chapter on this list was released very recently. I am of course talking about the one-shot chapter titled No Breeds from Hell, which was published in August of 2021, exactly 5 years after the end of the Bleach manga. This serves as the promising reintroduction into the world of Bleach, and the start of a new story arc possibly titled the Hell Arc. It was made for the 20th anniversary of the Bleach manga, and it takes place 12 years after the Thousand Year Blood War arc, and 2 years after the epilogue of Bleach. This chapter is officially titled chapter 686.5, and it should be read after the final chapter of the manga. This one-shot had ended with a cliffhanger teasing that there is more to come, but 1 year after its release, we still haven't heard anything from Kubo about any additional material for his upcoming Hell arc. Now, this pretty much brings us to an end to the canon bonus material released by Kubo during and after the serialization of Bleach. There were some bonus gag pages made by Kubo, but they were really short panels that may have not been canon to the story, so I didn't include them on this list. All in all, I have covered 14 bonus chapters here, and if you feel like I've missed anything
anything important, then definitely let me know in the comments of this video. Did you know about all of these special chapters, or were they as much of a surprise to you as they were to me when I'd first learnt about them? I look forward to reading all of your thoughts about the bonus Bleach manga material, so definitely continue the discussion in the comments. And lastly, thank you for making it to the end of this video, and I can't wait to see you in my next Bleach video.
If you enjoy my content, then you can support my channel through Patreon for as little as $1 a month, or even through YouTube by becoming a channel member. You will gain access to exclusive channel perks and a Discord server which I frequently use. So become a member of my Zero Division and be the first to know about my upcoming videos. And once again, thank you for sticking around till the end of the video, and whatever you contribute will mean a lot to me.